I don't want to remove anything. I just was going to make a comment on.
All right, well, when we get to that, that'll be fine.
See, now this is what happens. Where can I find it?
But when we get to the consent,
You approve. I don't know. The outline of this is not. Oh, here it is. Okay, I think it's 4.5.
okay. Well,
Nope, it's not. It's approve.
okay. Well,
Contract
when we
amendment.
get to the consent items,
4.4. Sorry about that.
you can make a comment at the beginning of that. That'd be wonderful. So no adjustments then, and then now would be the time for public comment. So this would be time for anyone to speak on an item that's not on tonight's agenda. Put my glasses on. Don't see anybody rushing to the podium. All right. Well, then we will move on to the consent agenda. You wanted to make a
Yeah,
comment?
I want to make that. Okay, 4.4 is the contract to approve a contract amendment for professional legal and litigation services, and in that, it's just another marker. It's to add for legal services for BBK and so on. But I just like to note, we have already, as a district, have spent over $1.7 million on defending lawsuits, a series of lawsuits. And this didn't include, this came directly from our customers. This money came from our customers and should have cost at this point of $120.30 per connection. And I'm just going to say, for the record, that this shouldn't have happened. I mean, I think all of us should be worried about that. Anyway, so that's all. And this also did not include anything, the additional FOI and staff time and all the consultants that help participate and support the district during these lawsuits. It's just a major expense.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. And is there any, again, public comment on the consent agenda? Again, not seeing any. Okay. Any other director comments or even motions, things like that?
I'll move to approve the rest of them.
I'll second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. All right, so then we'll go to, I think we're going to reports. So, a little different structure now. But first we'll go with district council. Josh, do you have any reports?
No report this evening, President Hugh. Thank you.
Okay. And so let me have a few others. Let's see.
I could go ahead and just speak.
What, you have a
Sure,
whole
with
report?
the new organization, we've pulled most of the reports from the different departments and staff down into section 5. So they're there for the board's review, and if there are questions, you can direct them to us at this time. But there will be no presentation.
Okay. And if there are any public comments on the reports overall, I probably should have asked for that before the district council report, but seeing none, no public ready to run for the podium, we'll move on then. Any director questions on any of the reports?
Let's see, I don't know how to get this, the agenda to work. I'm always lost in this. Just the first part of the item 5, but it just isn't responding to it just goes back to the beginning of the thing, so forget it.
Having trouble navigating the agenda?
Yeah, the index doesn't work, the outline.
We can definitely maybe, following the meeting, do some, like a one-on-one call with you, Director Christensen,
Okay.
and kind of walk through that.
Okay, no, that'll be fine. Thank you.
Okay. So
No, I've got it.
then we'll move on to business items. And the first business item is item 6.1, approval of a will serve letter on San Andreas. And I think, Taj, that's yours.
Yes, good evening. So the reason this is coming to you is because it is a parcel that is outside of our service area. There are several parcels in this area that are served by the district that are but through extraterritorial services. And this one is going to request that as well. It's a very small, about a third of an acre triangular lot that has an existing house on it. I don't anticipate there being much more development going on there. It's served by a private well right now, and they are out of water. They do not have water at this time. So we've expedited this, brought it to you. LAFCO has been aware of the situation, and so it'll be left, we'll issue a will serve letter with the condition that they obtain an extraterritorial service agreement, and we'll leave it at that. If they move forward with it, they have that option if you approve it. If they don't, then it's their choice. Yeah, there's the map. It's in the packet.
And I would be asking for public comment, but I don't see any members of the public. So,
We're unable to come due to a prior vacation that was scheduled.
okay, they were thinking of coming, okay. And it is surrounded, I think, thank you for the map, by the way.
You're welcome.
That's always helpful to see they're surrounded by extraterritorial services and
And there is a water main in front of this parcel, so we don't need infrastructure to serve it like we would the Renaissance High School.
any board member questions?
So that their well just ran dry, or is it a contamination problem?
They're aware of contamination in the area. I'm not sure they have saltwater intrusion at this time, but there is nitrates that are known to be elevated. I think the issue is that they just don't have water. Either it's a pump issue, and they're wondering whether they should invest money in the well. Their neighbor, who is served by us through an extraterritorial service, has surrendered rights to the well, and so they're on their own. I should correct myself. They legally have a 50% interest in the well, but they've informed this resident that they're not interested in keeping the well.
And what are they using for water?
They're a customer of ours. The other.
That little green trapezoid.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
I was wondering how long they had that house there with that water.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you on that. I think it's been there
Not a new house.
25 plus years. It's not, it's been there for a while.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments? Yes.
I think I would be very happy to approve this well serve. I ride my bike by there all the time. I see that house all the time. The owner and his wife own the sandbar in Capitola, which was flooded a couple of years ago. So these people have been through a lot, which I feel have a lot of sympathy for them. And now they've been without water for weeks. So, I think I would be very happy to approve this.
Yeah, that general area is very vulnerable to bad water.
Okay. We could entertain a motion from anyone.
Second.
Seconded. Director Balboni seconded. You get that? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, Taj. All right, so now, as Alyssa takes the stage, and then we will have, this is where we'll have Spencer as well, correct?
Yes. Spencer will be joining remotely.
Right, so item 6.2, this is our demand projections.
Do I hit stop share?
Okay.
Oh, there's Spencer right there.
Spencer, you can go ahead and share your screen now.
Okay, great.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm just going to give a quick introduction to our item. This is our draft demand projections for the 2025 Urban Water Management Plan. And that it's a major component of the urban plan. So we're excited to present it to you tonight. Just quick spoiler, we did have 3 projections that came out of this process, and they're showing a very modest growth in population and housing, and a fairly level demand trend. We do have a couple of selections for you to choose from tonight, and we'd be happy to answer any of your questions after our presentation by Spencer Waterman from Water Systems Consulting. Spencer, you want to take it away?
Sounds great. Thank you, Alyssa. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, thanks for having me here tonight to talk about the Urban Water Management Plan, demand forecast. Real quickly, a quick agenda for the presentation today. I'll talk about the purpose of the demand forecast and then dig into the approach that we used and then dive a little bit deeper into kind of the first steps of developing the forecast using a baseline period and then shaping future growth based on what we call demand drivers. Then lastly, we'll wrap up with the recommended draft projections. So with all that, our guiding purpose here was to develop a forecast that establishes robust projections that inform planning and initiatives to maintain a sustainable water supply. Our overall approach included reviewing new information that's become available since the last UWMP in 2020, and then considering factors that impact future demands. Lastly, we combined our technical analysis with district's staff knowledge to project appropriate demands. All right, so digging into the approach. We used a demand per connection approach, which aligns with Department of Water Resources recommendations for urban water management plans. It's a widely used method, and we thought it was the most appropriate. So some key factors that go into that demand per connection approach is looking at a baseline period where we look at historical water use and then take a series of years where we think that it may represent a normal or average demand pattern that's appropriate for projecting future demands. And then on top of that, we start thinking about, well, how would that baseline potentially change? And that's when we start thinking about what we call demand drivers. And the key demand drivers that we're going to include climate, rates, and conservation. Lastly, once we have those revised baseline demand factors, we apply them to future dwelling units and connections projections to come up with our overall demands. So just to recap in a visual format for visual learners real quick, I'm just reiterating that we're establishing the baseline demand and developing demand factors per customer category. So, acre feet per single family residential housing unit, et cetera. And then we adjust those demand factors based on the demand drivers. And then lastly, we apply those demand factors to growth projections. And so the inputs for all of those parts of the forecast are from various sources. The first one being historic district data, looking back at historical usage and gallons per capita per day, things like that. And we coordinated with district staff to identify historic periods that may be representative of future conditions. For demand driver input data, we gathered information from the Mid-County Groundwater Agency, the California Department of Water Resources, and we also pulled in projected rates data from the district. For future development, we pulled data from AMBAG, the city of Capitola, and the county of Santa Cruz. And we had multiple meetings with all these agencies to talk about the projections that they had, to decide what's most appropriate and what we could adjust to specifically come up with estimates for the district's service area. These agencies were really helpful, and they gave their honest opinions about realistic growth numbers and when they expect to see that growth occurring in the future. So with that, I'll go into more detail about each of these sources in a couple slides later on. All right, so as I mentioned, one of the first steps is looking at baseline demand, looking backwards so that we can decide like a representative period that we can expect to use for future demands. One of the guiding things we do is kind of think about questions, to identify trends. And so some of those questions are things such as, what are historic normal years or a series of years where maybe there weren't influential factors at play. So, years when there wasn't a drought, things like that. Or other things to consider are things such as hydrologic or climatic conditions. Was it a really rainy year? Was it a really dry year? And then also we think about demands in relation to drought. So, were demands suppressed during a drought period, or did they come back up after a drought period? And then also, if demand was suppressed during a drought, could that be maintained into the future? Lastly, we were asking ourselves, there's been a historic groundwater emergency at play with the 25% curtailment. So in the future, as supplies become more robust, what could happen potentially if a curtailment goes away or something like that? So to dig in a little bit deeper, we looked at usage patterns in terms of gallons per capita per day, or GPCD. And I will just note that this is total demand divided by population. It's not specific to residential use. Sometimes GPCD can be confused across different state reports and things like that. So we compared GPCD with other demand drivers, shown here in the colored bars. And as you can see, and as you've experienced, demands have significantly reduced since the last major drought around 2014-16, and they've remained low, with a sustained 25% curtailment since 2014. Therefore, it's pretty safe to assume that a lot of conservation changes that have occurred in the past, such as efficient plumbing fixtures, appliances, and irrigation system retrofits, all things like that are physical, that those are likely to continue to lead to efficient water use. However, there are things that may change in the future, such as behavioral water usage patterns. Maybe in the future, if there are less constricting conditions, potentially usage behavior could change and demand might increase. So based on consideration of these factors, WC and district staff selected two baseline periods for consideration. The first one being a 5-year period from 2020 to 2024, and the second being a 10-year baseline period from 2015 to 2024. Now, with these two baseline periods, there's a few key pros and cons shown in this table here. But just to really quickly hit on them, the 5-year baseline really represents sustained physical and behavioral changes leading to sustained conservation. However, it may not capture future demand trends when constricting conditions may not be present and as supplies become more robust. For the 10-year baseline, a wider range of years with higher usage patterns is captured, but the post-2014 to 19 drought rebound that we saw, mini rebound, may be higher than the recent efficient use that we might expect to continue. Also provided for reference at the bottom there is the 2020 UWMP baseline, which was much higher than the baselines that we are now considering for this UWMP cycle. So I will note that the district is not alone with this usage trend of lower than projected 2020 UWMP demands. which are much lower, but they kind of peaked during the COVID pandemic. Sorry, I lost my spot there. During the COVID pandemic, and since then, we've seen that sustained conservation. So many coastal communities such as Santa Cruz and Santa Barbara have seen this trend, and they have right-sized their baseline to align with the more recent usage patterns. So, for example, Santa Barbara is using a 2021 through 2024 baseline, and Santa Cruz is using a 2020 to 2024 baseline. And both of these agencies are projecting basically flat demands into the future. And that's considering, sustained conservation while also having growth occur. So more efficient use while still including growth. All right, so now we can switch gears a little bit to key demand drivers. We selected key demand drivers with different district staff, basically really focusing on the ones that we thought had the most impact, which include rates, climate projections, and conservation from efficient technology, building, and plumbing codes. And for rates, as you all know, those are expected to go up in the future. And generally, when rates go up, demand decreases. And so we looked at the city of Santa Cruz's demand forecast, which used an econometric model, and they provided what's called an elasticity factor. And basically, it projects the amount of change in water use over time given a given percentage increase in rates. Now, we did adjust that factor because we do know that there's a diminishing return over time. Basically, there's only a certain point to where demand can decrease, and so we reduced the elasticity factor from the city of Santa Cruz study by 75% over time to represent that diminishing return. So the end result is that we were only considering rates at play. We would expect demand to reduce by 4% by the year 2050. And then for climate projections, we look to the Mid-County Groundwater Agency's Groundwater Sustainability Plan, and we gathered some information about changes to outdoor water use over time. Specifically, we looked at their projection of a 6% increase in evapotranspiration, or ETO, and we applied that change in evapotranspiration to a formula from the state to estimate outdoor water use. And the end result is that there was about a 6% projected increase in demand, if only looking at that particular factor. Lastly, we reviewed a report by the Department of Water Resources and the State Water Resources Control Board, which investigated indoor residential water use efficiency. And they did, a survey of existing usage in households, and then they also came up with an expected efficient new home water usage, which would be around 35 gallons per capita per day. And then we took a look at the district's data and estimated a current residential indoor use of about 38 gallons per capita per day. So ultimately, we're assuming a reduction from 38 to 35 GPCD, and the end result, if considered alone, would be about an 8% decrease in demand. Since these demand drivers don't occur in a vacuum, we did consider them in combination with each other, which I'll go into in this table here. So if we take each individual one, these percentages show what I just summarized in the previous slide about the change. But then when we combine these effects, there's a total change of about a 7% reduction when combined. And then if you break out the impacts to indoor use specifically and then outdoor use specifically, there's also a little bit of a difference there. So we're looking at about a 12% decrease in indoor usage due to more efficient plumbing codes and technology and things of that nature. And then we're looking at a overall outdoor impact of about a 1% increase in demand, mostly due to evapotranspiration. But then there's also a suppressing factor of increasing rates. So once we had our baselines set, and then our potential adjusted future demand factors based on these demand drivers, we applied them to some future growth projections. So as mentioned earlier, we coordinated with Capitola and the county and AMBAG. And Capitola and the county had the most recent and appropriate data because it allowed us to really dial in on the district service area. AMBAG's data was more at a higher level and did not get down to, a specific district service area. So we ended up going with the county and city's data as the best available data. And both of those agencies had two sets of projections each. And for the city, they had a trending growth rate projection, and the county had a general plan growth projection. And then those were kind of on the lower end. And then both agencies had projections for their housing elements. And the key driver for the housing element is to try and show basically theoretical development to meet regional housing needs allocations from the state, or you may have heard of that, RENA. So the resulting populations and the housing unit estimates for the district service area are shown in these two charts here. In order to apply the growth projections, we did need to break them down a little bit further into single family and multifamily categories, which is summarized in this table here. And as you can see, the housing element / RENA projections are higher than the alternative projections from the city and the county. And both the city and the county recommended using the historic trend for the city, and then the general plan for the county set of projections rather than the housing element projections, because in their opinion, they were a bit more realistic for growth forecasting. One thing to note is that we did not include accessory dwelling units or ADUs. Neither agency provided projections for those, but they did have some kind of rough estimates based on historic patterns. However, looking at the projections that they did provide, those likely exceed the potential new ADUs if you added them to the general plan and the historic trend scenarios from the city and the county. And additionally, we assume that ADUs would have a minimal impact on overall water demand, since they are required to meet efficient technology, building, and plumbing codes. And typically they may replace outdoor irrigation areas. And so it really is kind of a wash on the overall demand impact from ADUs.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
Because that I had trouble agreeing with that, just because, and I don't, maybe you can explain it so that I understand it better, but I mean, many of the ones we've seen, are full-on ADU units that could be rented by a whole nother family at some point. So I'm having trouble imagining that it's a wash, because that seems to be a very popular way of expanding housing right now. And then the other thing, while I'm at it, is just we have this big Cabrillo project going on too. So if you could address those two.
Yeah, and that's definitely something we can add in. We just, based on talking to the city and the county, didn't think it would make a large impact, but we can dig into it deeper and include that to see what the magnitude of change is.
But the concept is that you put forward, and I don't know if it's a wash, is that if you have an ADU, you've got less irrigation. And I don't know if that's a good assumption or bad assumption. Yeah.
All right. Shall we?
Wanted to, Spencer, can you address the question about Cabrillo?
Cabrillo.
The housing.
Yes,
yeah.
Yeah. So I would need to look back at the map that we got and double check if it includes it, but my recollection is that it does include projected growth there. But I will put an asterisk on that and have to follow up to confirm that. All right. Any other thoughts before I continue here?
Keep going. Sorry.
All right. No worries. That's great. Great input. All right. So once we incorporated all that growth data, the end result for projected housing units is shown in the chart on the left. And then we also considered non-residential connection growth using employee projection data from the housing elements from the county and the city, as well as AMBAG. And then we also looked at the district's historic connection data. And because projected employee growth does not quite align with all of the non-residential categories and their connections, we opted to look more so at historical connections from the district data. And ultimately, the long-term trend showed minor fluctuations in those connections, but overall there wasn't any kind of significant growth. And so as a result, we assumed that non-residential connections would remain constant into the future. I would also note that we did not get any specifics from the county or the city on non-residential growth, more so kind of speculation about certain developments. Okay, so pulling all of that information together, district staff and WSC recommend considering these 3 forecast scenarios shown in this chart here. Scenarios 1 and 2 use the same demand drivers and the same assumptions for residential growth from the city's historic trend data source and the county's general plan. The only difference between them is the baseline period of a 5-year and a 10-year scenario. We also looked at scenario 2A, which applies the lower 5-year baseline scenario with the higher growth data from the county and city housing elements. And that results in that middle projection there. And they're very close. So sorry for that being scrunched up there. All right. One thing to note is that the growth projection data that we got from the city and the county, they recommended that growth could occur by about 2040. They did not have a hard and fast rule on that. That was just their general recommendation. So that is why, if you notice, the demand bars kind of go pretty much flat until 2040. But then after 2040, it drops off a bit. And that's because the demand drivers are still driving usage per connection downward, but there aren't any assumed growth in connections or dwelling units after that point. The last thing I'll mention is that these are long-term average demand projections, and we know that they can fluctuate year to year or even over a series of years during long-term drought or things of that nature. But there are other portions of the UWMP, as well as the Water Shortage Contingency Plan, and then a separate annual water supply and demand assessment report to the state, where these things are, these fluctuations are considered for short-term, medium, and long-term influential events on demand. So in those different parts of the UWMP and the contingency plan, there will be considerations given to short-term impacts of wet and dry years, potential regulatory changes, or even things such as shifts in growth if they come up, like if a new large development comes up, some of those shorter term planning reports would consider that. So with that, I'm happy to hear any input or questions you all have on this. I appreciate it.
This would be the time for public comment. And they would each have 2 minutes to discuss their item, but I don't see anyone coming up. So we will move on to questions or comments from the board. Rochelle?
I'll take my turn now. This chart is really confusing, especially the dashed part. I take it at the top, the dashed part on the middle right is what was covered in the 2020 UWMP demand, and we're way lower. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So to give a little bit of context there, the 2020 UWMP was looking at a baseline period, I believe it was like 2010 to 2014, which as you can see in those dark gray bars, demand was quite a bit higher before that long-term drought. And so everybody in the water industry was kind of getting their crystal ball out, and most people thought that there would be a rebound in demands after, things kind of calm down from the drought and people return to normal usage patterns. However, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of coastal communities and also just generally statewide, we've seen this trend where demand came up a little bit up until the pandemic, and then it's consistently gone down since then. And so this is, not something that's happened just to the district. It's something that is happening all over. And so we're kind of trying to right size and rethink about, okay, how many of these conservation changes were permanent and what do we think is more realistic in the future? Whereas that projection 5 years ago was quite a bit different under different circumstances.
And there's also, if I recall, I actually remember the meeting because it was an interesting meeting to me. I think it was in the other room there. For some reason, we had to do it there. That the AMBAG projections were given more credence than we have in this analysis. And I always wondered why the AMBAG projections were so different. And I think you alluded to the fact that it's a bigger area that they're looking at. It's not as pertinent to our district. So their projections were very high.
And one thing I do want to note about the 2020 projections is the demand projections are supposed to be uncurtailed use. So that line is what we were figuring at that time if we had no curtailment in place. And so we knew at that time, we have curtailment and groundwater emergency, that we probably weren't actually going to be there. That was representative of where we could be if we had no curtailment. And so when we're moving forward, we're kind of just factoring in the robustness of the conservation that our district has shown. And now, even in the absence of curtailment, we think that conservation would persist. And so that's kind of why there's that big change from 2020 to now.
Well, yeah, I have a comment about curtailment. I'm a betting man, and I'd wager big dollars that if we asked 100 of our customers whether they thought there was curtailment, that the vast majority wouldn't know what we're talking about. That's just my opinion on that. It's a great report. I like the graphics, and you kept using the word realistic, and I like that. That's what I think this is something that's realistic. I know that you're wanting to go out into 2050, and maybe is that a requirement to go out to 2050 in the
The requirement is 20 years, but they recommend 25 in
Yeah.
the guidance.
And I would not believe anything that far in the future. There's going to be a lot of changes, but it has been fairly robust, recently, and I agree that the droughts have changed people's behaviors and also the physical, um, devices that curtail water, that reduce water use, and they seem to be lasting, which is a good thing for the health of our basin. Yeah.
Jennifer, and then Carla.
Yeah, just briefly, I also have concerns that Tom had voiced about the ADUs not being included and concern about the 624 Cabrillo student UCSC housing that's opening in 2027. That said, the assumptions in this report are intentionally conservative, explicitly reflecting a post-Pure Water Soquel operating environment, and they seem to remain subject to future adjustments if observed demand trends differ. So I'm, really pleased about that. Thank you.
I just wanted to comment. I mean, I was looking at this, the demand drivers, and my concern was the climate, because it's about the least predictable aspect of this whole thing. Growth is predictable, and even the direction of our population growth in this area is fairly predictable. We can see what's happening right now until it maxes out. But I was reading an article in the New York Times this morning about the weather across the entire country. And then for once, California is 100% drought-free this year, and the entire rest of the country east of the Sierras is in a drought condition, including New York and lots of places, Florida, Utah, and so it seems really difficult to predict what our water supply is going to be, and I don't know how we control for that right now. I think it's really worth it. This is a really thorough job of doing that, trying to assess this demand and this what's going to happen with our aquifer, but I'm still concerned just because of this climate. Climate change is not just all rain or all dry. It is unpredictability, complete unpredictability at this point. That's all I want to say.
Just one last question. I assume that you didn't include the 10-year baseline with the housing element because it wouldn't be that much different, or you think it's too conservative as far as covering it? That would be the highest level you would predict, right? What was the reasoning not to include that one?
I think when we chose what we did choose, we tried to balance out, what are the more conservative parts of the estimate and the not. So I think that's kind of why we did that. Because if you look at the 5-year baseline with housing element growth, that's, assuming the lower baseline with the higher growth. And then that 10-year baseline with the lower growth is they're kind of evening each other out. And then we wanted to show kind of the floor, which was that 5-year baseline with the lower growth projection. I think we felt that the kind of going high on both of those wasn't as realistic, but we could show that.
I mean, you got to be a little bit above the blue line.
Yeah, they're all so close anyway.
They're very close, yeah. If you made the lines thicker, they would be right over each other.
Yeah, we did look at that, and I have that in my back pocket here. So for reference, let me see here. There we go. So the top line there, the yellow 1A scenario, looks at that tenure and the housing element.
So,
I think it's a little bit like what Director Jaffe was saying. You're going out into like forecasting out 2040, 2045. I think this is kind of why the California requires us to do this every 5 years, because you're getting out there into some numbers that are, I think what the new saying is, theoretical. So I think as we were working on, and especially with Alyssa and Spencer, trying to provide some projections, those three were the ones that they landed on to present. I do agree. I think that most of our customers don't realize that we're still in a stage 3, primarily because of the statewide messaging. All the neighboring agencies around us have lifted it. And that is why when looking at resetting our baseline, we didn't have that rebound. So we agree that I think we shouldn't assume that people would be changing behaviors upon lifting it. And I think that's built into all three of those lines.
so can I digress?
Yeah.
So the UMP is required, and the purpose is so that water agencies plan in the future and have hopefully a realistic plan. Are there any sticks if we don't, let's say we project 3,200 and it's 3,400 for water use? Does the state come back and say, your plan wasn't realistic, because of that we're doing A, B, and C?
I mean, the main purpose of this is it's a long-term planning projection. So it's so that we can plan for adequate supply to meet this demand. And so, assuming we're in the ballpark and, we do have, a system that can handle some fluctuations, then we should be okay. Like, as far as I know, this isn't a number that the state is tying us to in any way.
Can I add something to that, though? Because it is for long-term planning. And so if we have to plan for like how much water we might be willing to share, to me, it seems like the more, I want it to be realistic, but the more conservative, higher prediction seems to protect us more.
I think obviously, if you're projecting a larger need, then you'll be making sure you have a supply that could meet that. If we're looking at either regional sharing or transferring or a build out of a project, I think we need to think about what the indicators of that would be and when we would get to that point. So if we're seeing demands of, say, 2967 to 3100 or 3178 out in 2049 or 2050, where would you be waiting until what time to transfer? Or, as we go towards that, as we're not immediately going to be seeing those demands. So I think it could be, as you're building in your forecast, either through what triggers or indicators are we looking at, say, every year or every 5 years to build that balance and that equilibrium for the basin, sustainability, meeting district customers, and then regional sharing or partnerships.
I agree with you, Tom. Be more conservative, but even there's a lot of detail that's lost in this type of analysis, and those details might be more important on our decisions on sharing water. So
I guess at least of these three, I would favor the one with the 10-year baseline.
to be more conservative.
Yeah.
I think being conservative is very important, because I think it's going to be extremely especially as we get farther into the future, it's going to be extremely variable what's going to happen. And luckily, we do have a pure water Soquel project,
Yeah.
so we can respond to that kind of variability. So we have some stability through that project. But, I think we need to plan for variability for sure.
So is that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we adopt the projection to, let's see, projection one
Yeah.
for inclusion.
I'll second.
Any other comments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Of course, blue's my favorite color anyway, so.
Thank you. And thank you, Spencer.
All decisions
Yeah,
made,
thank you all very
right?
much.
That's right.
Thank you, Spencer, and thank you to Alyssa.
Thank you, Spencer.
Yeah, very clear presentation,
Yeah.
very nice
Very
report.
good and very well laid out.
And good work, Alyssa.
I guess I should have voted for red.
And Alyssa, you and Spencer, or at least you, will be back for the curtailment
Yeah.
section, right?
Oh, yeah. And we'll also have Cameron Tana from Montgomery and Associates.
Great, yeah,
Actually,
okay.
we are both wearing.
So thank you, Spencer, and thank you, Alyssa, for all your work. So we'll go to item 6.3, which is to form an ad hoc committee for the 65th anniversary and some public information materials. Becca.
Thank you, President Lehue. So yes, we would like to form a limited term ad hoc committee similar to the one that we did for the Pure Water Soquel tank screen modifications. We anticipate, working on 65th anniversary publications, the community water plan wrap up, and well as Pure Water Soquel Educational Center items. We anticipate it from February through July, maybe August. So super short term. We have a lot of work to do in a short amount of time.
Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll move to the board. Thoughts, volunteering?
I'm happy to serve and particularly to help just to ensure the materials are clean and clear, factually grounded, and support stewardship.
Okay. Okay, Carla, you're willing?
Yeah, I think it'd be fun to work with Becca again.
Okay. You guys are good?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, well,
Is there a motion
then
needed?
we will,
Yeah.
somebody can make a motion that includes those two.
You want to make it or me?
Form the
I'll
committee,
make the motion to have those two in a committee.
and, yeah, okay, the recommended action. Okay,
Thank you.
all right,
I'll second.
Yeah, who seconded?
I second that.
all right.
I'll make it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion.
Thanks
carries.
for stepping up.
I'm excited.
Doing that, yeah.
Thank you. I was going to actually volunteer you anyway, so.
Thank you.
Okay, then, item 6.4, this is going to be a review of updated district policies. I think back to you, Alyssa.
Yep, you got me again. This item is just, it's about the ongoing cleanup of policies that we've been doing. Emma brought some of the board policies for cleanup late last year. And this is just in an effort to make sure that our language is current and everything is consistent. So we have a couple that we're making minor edits to, another that got rewritten, that's the surplus policy. And then we have several that we're recommending for sunsetting that aren't as relevant now. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Once again, public comment is not there. So back to the board for questions or comments or motions or things like that.
Couple quick questions. Regarding the surplus property, I was wondering where exactly do the sale proceeds go?
The general fund?
The general fund? Okay. Regarding the tree maintenance, I'm wondering, I understand that the fire hazard is important. And I see that it's been defined pretty clearly, but I'm a little worried that people will just say, oh, it's a fire hazard. So how is that insured? I'd love some confidence on that.
Yeah,
Arborist has to agree with that?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's outlined in there, but you could also just tell the arborist to say, hey, it's a fire hazard. I don't know, it worries me.
We could add more language, about potentially a fire inspection or something. I'd have to look into that. By like the fire department to see whether or
Would be
not
good.
something would be
I would love
considered that. Okay.
We feel like more protected. And then finally, on the new and expanded water services for parcels with existing wells, I'm wondering, how will staff document the groundwater basin benefit so that the future variance decisions are consistent and fair? How is that done?
I was, Taj, do you have any examples of when that a variance has been granted in the past? For new and expanded water services to existing wells?
And I could also just add, I think that there is some analysis that would need to be done on this. It's not necessarily always black and white. For example, you could have a property that both had private wells. One could be like a stone's throw from the ocean and another one up in the hills. And so that is something in terms of like a basin benefit. Or if it was a well that had a lot of extraction versus a small yield. Those are the things that I think we still may want to bring to the board for analysis to be presented. The staff would do that, and then we would bring to the board for their consideration.
Okay, thank you.
So I was comfortable with most of these changes. The one that I wasn't entirely comfortable with is because I didn't see the old policy and see how it's changed, and it's a little meatier. The issues is the what do you do when there's an existing well, and it talks about giving credit, for towards costs for joining the district, and I don't, maybe the other directors are clearer on what exactly the policy is, but I'm not comfortable voting on that one myself at this point. I'd like to see the old policy, the new policy, the changes, and have a discussion about the logic behind the policies.
I think with that policy, Director Jaffe, is that policy is going to be sunset. So there is no new policy.
Director Jaffe, are you
Maybe I'm confused about the well, what our policy is when there's an existing well.
Are you on page, this page right here that we're showing, credits and incentives to change water source from private well to district service was a policy that gave credit in terms of WDO credits if there was a well and they came onto our system.
Okay.
Since there's no WDO program, there was that edit and some other, that was one of the
It
reasons
could
to
be I
sunset.
misread the material.
And the thought behind sunsetting that one was that if there were future incentives for private wells, that may want to be addressed through the Mid-County Groundwater Agency.
Does that clarify for you?
I think I got confused because there were memos from 2008 and 2005, and
Yeah, they're related, similar policies that the new and expanded water
so
service.
the policy that we'd be voting on would be the one that's on page 137 of 149. Well, the one about the existing wells.
Yes, it's just that 137, that one pager.
Yeah, that one, the changes were really just to clean it up and to remove references to water demand offset program, to change references to the Mid-County Groundwater Agency. There was no,
Okay, then I stand corrected. I was getting confused with the old policy and thinking that there was still some part of that.
yes, that it is
I'm
a
now
little
comfortable
confusing.
with it. Yeah.
And then just to clarify, there is no more an incentive to come off of a well. The water capacity fee is the buy-in component only now.
Right.
There is no more.
That would be the same whether you're coming off a well or not coming off a well. There's no credit.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks, Taj.
Any other questions?
One point to bring up is Josh was mentioning if we can look at the surplus, I'm sorry, it's the tree pruning and maintenance policy. And if there's some language to propose, then we can adopt it tonight rather than to have to bring it back, if you guys are open to that.
So
Which one is it?
that was the one that Jennifer had the question about, some additional protection, like it's on page 134, like tree removal for fire hazard. I think right now it just says, as determined by the district, a licensed arborist or other qualified professional. So I don't have a particular suggestion, but I think you were, let's see, wait.
I've found, because, my experience, because I've worked for planning and public works, it's hard to get an arborist to want to kill a tree. I've really had, trees that I thought were outright dead in my neighbor's house, they would not say were dead. So I really don't think this is going to be an issue.
But what if it said instead, as determined by the district and a licensed arborist, period? But get rid of that other qualified professional. Is this a professional dentist or what? I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. What would be clear there?
I think that's a reasonable approach. I think another approach would be to just delete the language about a licensed arborist or other qualified professional and just leave it as determined by the district, recognizing when the district makes that determination, the property owner or, affected party is going to bring the best evidence they have to the district, which could be an arborist report. It could be something that we think is reasonable.
Keep it simple.
I don't know. I would rather have an arborist.
I'd rather have the arborist for sure. And I was thinking about adding the fire department, like you said. I would like additional strictness on it.
Well, the fire department would definitely want to cut down the tree.
Okay, well then let's just do the licensed arborist, period, like Tom said.
No,
It's like asking PG&E.
So my suggestion was just to say it's determined by the district and a licensed arborist, comma, based on its condition, blah, blah, blah.
So we absolutely can go that way if the board feels that's most appropriate. There may be situations where it's such a fire hazard that we may decide that bringing out an arborist to get their approval may not be necessary. So it's just real. That could be one consideration for you. If you go with the language as determined by district and a licensed arborist, we would always have to have the arborist. Or just delete the reference to licensed arborist as the qualifier there, and recognize that staff would likely require an arborist report or other evidence if they were in that situation.
Isn't that a policy then? Because we're saying we're going to ask for an arborist report usually?
So we could either leave that as discretion to staff, or if you wanted Director Lather to clarify that, we could add that later in that subsection, maybe at the very end of the language, saying like a licensed arborist report will generally be required.
Or we could say, at district's discretion, an arborist report will be required, something like that.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. I don't see what's the matter with the language there, like licensed arborist or some other professional that allows the fire department.
No, I don't.
I don't think we would really read it like that since it says qualified.
I know.
It's up
I
to
was
the
kidding.
district, though. Someone has to make the decision.
I like Michelle's language. That sounds very wonderful. Do you want to repeat that?
Do you want to try?
Did you get it?
If you
I think
can.
so.
Thank you.
I can try, and then you can correct me. So that subsection C, the beginning would now read, the tree constitutes a fire hazard as determined by the district based on its condition. The language would remain. And then at the very end of that paragraph, it would read, at the district's discretion, a licensed arborist report may be required.
Okay.
I think you said it's
That's
slightly
good.
different.
No, I think that was,
Oh,
Well,
I remember
slightly
this.
differently, but I think it's still.
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
I would like very likely will be required. Like 99%
I think for this, and I get what Director Balboni you're concerned about, but we also have where our O&M manager may feel like this area on our site needs to be cleaned because of a fire hazard, and to schedule and get that cleaned before, like, say, we have like in 2 weeks there's going to be high winds and we want to clear this out. That could be a little bit restrictive for our day-to-day business operations. So I want to make sure that it can be a little bit flexible because getting an arborist could be hard.
with the flexibility, I do understand all that, but instead of may be required, like extremely likely to be required.
so. We could also go with a motion of Josh's wording and then vote on it.
Okay, I'll move to go with
The one that you came up with. And
first two with the motion as corrected by Josh.
Okay, so, yeah, everybody understands, so it'd be the tree constitutes fire hazard as determined by the district based on it, and then the sentence at the end maybe,
Or if your will generally be required, that could be an alternative.
Something like that. I know, because I just,
Yeah, will
I don't think
generally
it's going to
be
be.
required, yeah.
The neighbors are wanting to protect, this is what my exposure has been to tree removal, because they do it freely in Santa Cruz County. I don't know, it's arborists, firemen, it doesn't matter, they get it done, even if it's in the middle of the night. But I do think we don't want to leave it, if we want to remove a tree, we should be sensitive to getting a second opinion on that.
Do you want to make the motion will generally be required?
Sure, I'll change it to will generally be required.
Yeah,
I'll second.
so
Change.
I just
I'll vote
think
for that.
it would be a bad look if the city said, if the district said, well, we need to get rid of these trees because there's going to be a fire.
everybody understands the worded motion.
Yes.
And
Josh, you have it,
there'd be some fallout.
okay? So we're just going to talk about the motion to change the wording on that now, and then, or do you want to do them all together?
Let's do them all together.
Okay, so all three together with those changes,
I think there's just, oh yeah, all three on that first part.
okay. And that's okay with the motion and the second?
Yes.
Okay, all right, clear. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Right?
Opposed? Okay, we got that. Good job.
But
And then-
did we vote on the removal of the three that,
Doing that now.
okay.
So I make a motion to sunset the vehicle replacement policy, credit incentive to change water source from private wells to district service, and the electronic tablets issued by district. Any second on that?
Second,
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for, I think that was a good idea to kind of just move forward and figure out how to get it done. All right, so now, the next item 6.5, is about water reuse, but I think there's a comment
Yes.
you want to make first?
Yeah, we do want to just make note that the subject line says cast votes for the National Water Reuse Association Board of Directors. And for clarification, this is the California Water Reuse Board, not national.
Okay. And then do you want to say anything
Yeah, I'll
else?
tee this up. So as a member agency of the California Water Reuse Association, they periodically have board seats. Currently, I am on the board. but they do have a very large board and they like different variations of membership on the board. So with some seats available this year, they had quite a few applicants that they were considering. The California Water Reuse has narrowed that down and are proposing that the slate that is included in the packet be the ones that would be voted upon. As a formality, it goes out to the membership. The board has already kind of endorsed this group. And so we're bringing this to the board tonight for your consideration. You can either approve all of them that are listed. You can pick some. In the past, the board has, just picked people that they knew, and then we can submit that. And I do know some of them I don't, but their biographies are included in the attachment.
I was just wondering why some of them don't live in the state or don't have experience in the state. And Ohio and Kansas. Maybe they are here?
This is the national group, right?
No, it's the California one.
I want to make sure, is it national? Now I'm second guessing myself.
Well, because it looks like, based on that thing, it seems
Because I was wondering about that too.
You
And
got Ohio and Florida.
Let me just look it up really quick.
I mean, I don't want to pick on anybody
And
from
I.
another state. I was just wondering.
But in the meantime, I wanted to shout out for Melanie Tan and Greta Zornis. They look pretty awesome. I think they would make good
Melanie
leaders.
Tan for sure. We know her.
I know we all know Melanie.
Let me, can you search it too, Emma? Because I'm on my phone.
We should take public comment and get that.
Wait, let us,
You want to go up there? So there, I did take a look, and there was no evidence that there was somebody willing and wanting to make public comment. So
you know what? I actually stand corrected because I'm looking at the email now, and it is from Water Reuse in Alexandria, Virginia. So strike that. Let's start over, shall we?
all right, back to this item.
Okay, now it makes sense.
Melanie, could you say a little something about what this board does?
Yes, so this board meets with, there's a Water Reuse National organization, and then there's several state sections. For example, California, Nevada, Florida, Texas, I believe Georgia. There's quite a few up and coming boards. This board functions to kind of oversee the executive director at the national level and some of their initiatives. They're focused obviously on increasing membership and knowledge transfer and networking through the state sections, but they also work a lot with overseeing water reuse in Washington, D.C. and some of the policy initiatives.
Okay, thanks. So I would think that having diversity on such a board would be good. So I would go with recommending everyone that is one, that's on this list.
Are we supposed to make a motion?
Yes.
How many openings there are?
And how,
Well,
I don't understand
So
how many.
if they went through a lot of applications to get to these five. I think 30.
30.
applications.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, so they've already weaned this down quite a bit.
Yeah.
So do we choose a few or all of them?
We can choose the slate, or we can give all 5 votes to Melanie Tan.
Oh,
You know.
In the past, we've just voted for the person that we actually knew on some of these votes, but I would say it seems like it's a very well-rounded group that they formed. Slate that is.
I'll make the motion that we endorse all of them.
I'll second.
Cast our vote.
Cast our vote for all of them. Sorry, not endorse. Yeah, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. But we can tell Melanie we all want to vote for her.
Yeah.
We wanted to load all the votes for her, but.
Stuff the ballot box. Okay. All right, so now I think, Becca, you have a little treat for us. This is the year in review slideshow.
We do, about a 5.5 minute. I think Melanie's going to cue it up. We love to showcase all the stellar work that staff has done in calendar year 2025. And I think this is our 6th year doing this. So we're excited.
So I am sharing, but I don't see it. So maybe I have to share it a different way. You want me to come over there, Melanie? That'd be great.
Don't forget about volume.
I think I'm doing it right. And then
Yay. Right. One just the other day.
They all from yes.
It's Oliver.
Nice, thank you.
Nice job.
Could you post that?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay, so we will now adjourn to closed session. So we'll take a few minutes to,
Can I take
Nice.
a picture of the board before we do that?
Sure.
where do you want us?
I would have dressed up better.
Want us-
You can just sit.
I think it'd be good for you to sit at the dais so we can at least get one picture for the website with this new configuration. Let me grab the snack. Let me grab the snack.
Did you get it?
No,
Just to make it a nice, clean, beautiful.
I know, and I closed my iPad.
Water.
Water. Pure water.